An 82-year-old black man was just sitting on a bench, coffee in hand, newspaper in lap, when a white cop tried to force him up, accused him of loitering, and demanded to search his bag. But what the officer didn't know: that old man was a civil rights legend. And sitting just a few feet away, watching it all, was a federal prosecutor with a badge and a camera. Welcome to Stories, where we bring you the moments that shake the world. What happened next didn't just humiliate one officer, it rocked an entire police department. Dear viewer, this isn't just a story. It's a testament to quiet power and the pursuit of justice in places most overlook. If this is your first time here, drop a comment with where you're watching from. And if stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon for daily voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for joining us on Stories. Now, let's dive in. It began with a bench. Nothing fancy, just weathered wood and rusted bolts under an old oak in Forsyth Park, Savannah. Tourists passed it without a glance. Kids climbed over it. Joggers ignored it. But for one man, that bench was hallowed ground. Every morning at 7 a.m., he'd arrive. Same bench, same paper cup of coffee, same polished shoes and pressed slacks. His name was Solomon Reed, and to most, he was just an elderly black man watching the world go by. But hold on, Stories fans, because this morning, the world was about to notice him, and not for the reasons it should have. Solomon was 82, a retired historian, a widower, and once, an architect of a landmark desegregation policy that reshaped Georgia's public institutions. But no one in the park knew that. They saw only age and color. And for one police officer, new to town, hungry for authority, and drunk on his badge, that was enough. Officer Ryan Callahan was patrolling on foot. Young, white, impatient, with a record of proactive enforcement. Code for profiling dressed as vigilance. When he saw Solomon on that bench, coffee in hand, leather satchel beside him, something in him twitched. Bias? Arrogance? A need to prove something? Whatever it was, he locked onto Solomon like a hound spotting prey. He didn't approach right away. He circled, watching Solomon flip through the Savannah morning news with slow, deliberate fingers, watching pigeons gather near his shoes, waiting for crumbs that never came. Watching, as if waiting for Solomon to slip up and justify what he already wanted to do. But Solomon didn't flinch. He'd felt eyes like Callahan's before, on buses, in courthouses, from shopkeepers, eyes that saw not a man, but a question mark in the wrong place. Callahan radioed in, voice smooth. Got a suspicious individual loitering in Forsyth. Elderly male, unknown intentions. Going to make contact. No backup requested. He thought he had it handled. After all, what could one old man do? Solomon heard the crunch of gravel and didn't look up. He knew that walk: heavy boots, swagger, ownership over every inch of public space. He kept his eyes on the paper, an op-ed about redistricting holding his attention. He sipped his lukewarm coffee, turned the page, the crinkle of newsprint louder than the approaching steps. Morning, Callahan said flatly. Solomon nodded, eyes still down. Morning, officer. Callahan stood a beat too long. Can I ask what you're doing here? Solomon looked up, gaze clear, direct, unafraid. Drinking coffee, reading the paper, enjoying the park. Is that not allowed? Callahan's smile was tight. Do you live around here? I do. Got ID to prove that? Solomon leaned back, measuring the young man. Georgia law doesn't require me to show ID unless I'm suspected of a crime. Callahan's jaw tightened. His hand drifted near his holster, not to draw, but to remind. The power play began. You fit the description of someone we got complaints about, he lied. Oh, Solomon said, eyebrow raised. Elderly black historian sitting quietly on a bench with arthritis and a newspaper. Must be a real crime wave out here. Can you believe the nerve? Stay with Stories, because this is about to explode. The sarcasm didn't land well. Neither did the calm. Bullies hate mirrors. I'm going to have to ask you to stand up, Callahan said, so I can search that bag. No, you're not, Solomon replied, voice low, ironclad. Callahan's eyes narrowed. You refusing to cooperate? I'm refusing to be harassed. Around them, the park went on. A couple tossed a frisbee. A dog barked at ducks in the fountain. Life moved, as if history wasn't replaying in real time. Then it happened. Callahan reached for Solomon's arm, not roughly, but firmly, asserting dominance. In one swift, startling motion, Solomon stood, steadier than expected. He didn't shove, didn't curse, just spoke 6 words, soft as a whisper, sharp as a blade. You don't know who I am. The moment froze. Callahan scoffed. I don't care who you are. But someone else did. Seated yards away was Assistant U.S. Attorney Marcus Langston. Black, 40s, sharply dressed, sipping his own coffee. He'd been watching, not expecting trouble, but knowing too well how good men get humiliated for existing in the wrong skin. Marcus didn't rise, not yet. But his hand rested on his DOJ credentials, waiting like a storm. Because Callahan didn't know Solomon Reed wasn't just a man on a bench. He was a survivor of Selma, a speaker at Morehouse, a scholar who'd mentored senators and dismantled policies with a pen and the Constitution. If Callahan thought he'd found someone expendable, he was about to learn the cost of his ignorance. It started so small, a bench, a cup of coffee. But what unfolded would shake not just the officer, not just the department, but all of Savannah. And Solomon Reed, calm as ever, knew it. He'd waited his whole life for this fight. And he wasn't alone. Solomon didn't flinch, not when Callahan's grip tightened, not when the officer's voice dropped to that controlled edge masking threat with procedure. Solomon had seen fear and hatred in uniform before, raw and unfiltered. This was different, performance laced with entitlement, a rehearsed power trip by someone too young to grasp the weight he was wielding. I'm going to have to ask you again, sir, Callahan said, louder, for show. Please comply, or I'll be forced to detain you. Solomon held his gaze. Detain me for what? Drinking coffee while black? Callahan blinked, thrown off. The crowd, indifferent moments ago, began to shift. A dog walker slowed, earbuds out. A cyclist looped back. People sensed something was wrong. And there, under a nearby tree, Marcus Langston quietly closed his coffee lid and stood. Callahan didn't notice. He was locked on Solomon, this old man who wouldn't bow. Solomon's calm only fueled his insecurity. Power demands submission, and Callahan wasn't getting it. So he tried to force it. I'm not asking again, he barked. Stand up and hand me that bag. The satchel, old, cracked leather, fraying at the seams, became his focus, a potential threat, an excuse. Solomon moved first, not for the bag, but for his cane, resting against the bench. Let me be very clear, he said, voice low, unshaken. This bag contains decades of documents, civil rights history, testimonies, letters from Martin Luther King, handwritten notes from Thurgood Marshall, photographs from marches you've only read about in footnotes if you read them at all. If you lay a single hand on it without a warrant, Officer Callahan, you'll not only violate my civil liberties, you'll desecrate a legacy larger than you seem to comprehend. The silence was thunderous. Then Marcus Langston stepped in. Officer, he called, calmly. Callahan turned, already defensive. Sir, this is a police matter. Marcus didn't flinch. That matter is a constitutional violation unfolding in broad daylight. I'd advise you to unhand Mr. Reed immediately. And who the hell are you? Callahan snapped. Marcus reached into his coat, slow, deliberate, non-threatening, and pulled out a leather badge wallet. He opened it with one hand. The seal of the U.S. Department of Justice caught the sun like a flare. Marcus Langston, Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Georgia. A ripple ran through the bystanders. Callahan stared at the badge, then Marcus, then Solomon. For the first time that morning, doubt flickered in his eyes. Now, Marcus continued, stepping closer, not looming, you're going to let go of Mr. Reed, take 3 steps back, and explain why you initiated contact without cause, attempted an unlawful search, and escalated a peaceful moment into a constitutional crisis. Callahan released Solomon's arm like it burned. Solomon took a deep breath, straightened his back, and lifted his cane with dignity, not weakness. His look to Callahan wasn't anger, it was disappointment. A look that said, "You could have done better. You still can. But you chose wrong." "You need to understand something," Marcus said, subtly blocking Solomon from the officer. "You didn't just pick the wrong target. You picked the wrong era. This isn't 1963. There are cameras in this park. People are watching. There are platforms where this story can be told. And most importantly, there are laws now with real consequences. Do you understand me?" Callahan didn't answer. More people gathered. Phones raised. A couple whispered as they recorded. A local journalist, out walking her dog, texted her editor. Solomon stepped forward, tapping his cane once on the pavement, the sound echoing like a gavel. "Young man," he said to Callahan, "you came here expecting silence, but silence is a luxury we no longer afford oppressors. Let me be clear, what you've done today will be remembered, not because I'm famous, but because I'm ordinary. And when injustice happens to ordinary people and gets caught on camera, that's when it becomes undeniable." Callahan opened his mouth, but Marcus raised a hand. "I'd advise you not to say another word until your union rep and a federal investigator are present." Sirens wailed in the distance, not panicked, but summoned, a system alert. Savannah PD was sending a supervisor, but it was too late. The damage was done. Solomon turned to Marcus. "Thank you," he said simply. "You shouldn't have needed me," Marcus replied, jaw tight. "No," Solomon agreed, "but I'm grateful you were here." As uniformed officers arrived and Marcus prepared to give his statement, Solomon eased back onto the bench. He picked up his coffee, now cold, and sipped it anyway. He looked over the park, his park, and saw not the confrontation, but the movement about to ignite. Because sometimes change doesn't come with fire or marches. Sometimes it begins with a man sitting on a bench and refusing to move. The moment Callahan stepped back, the atmosphere in Forsyth Park shifted. Subtle at first, a change in the breeze, quiet murmurs of conversations too cautious to start. But it was profound, like the park exhaled after holding its breath. Solomon stayed seated, hands on his cane, chest rising slowly, allowing himself a reprieve from the tension coiled in his bones. He was recovering, not physically, but emotionally, from having to stand, once again, for what should never be questioned, his right to sit in peace. Marcus didn't move. His badge, still visible, wasn't just federal authority, it was a shield, protecting the vulnerable from a system that too often failed to see them as worthy. The crowd grew. People who'd passed without noticing now lingered, wide-eyed, phones up. But one voice broke the moment open. "Is someone going to explain why that man was being harassed for sitting on a bench?" It was Nora Delgado, early 30s, sharp blazer, camera bag on her shoulder, a local journalist with a growing following for her unfiltered reporting on policing. She was live streaming now, phone capturing every detail. "Sir," she said to Solomon, "are you okay? Do you want us to call someone?" Solomon nodded. "Thank you, young lady. I believe help already arrived." Marcus addressed her calmly. "He's safe now, Miss Delgado, but we'll ensure this incident is investigated fully." "Is the officer going to be charged?" someone shouted from the crowd. Callahan, still nearby, shifted uneasily, his smug certainty now strained with unease. He opened his mouth, but Marcus turned first. "You're not to say another word," Marcus said, low, firm. "This matter has escalated beyond your department. You're under federal observation, effective immediately. Any further action will only complicate the outcome." Callahan bristled but stayed silent. The authority in Marcus's voice was absolute. Two senior officers from Savannah PD arrived, summoned by escalating radio chatter. Captain Rivers, gray-haired, took one look at the crowd, the DOJ badge, the streaming cameras, and Solomon's cane, and knew the narrative. Marcus approached. "Captain, I suggest you separate Officer Callahan from the scene and begin internal documentation. I'll contact the Civil Rights Division in D.C. within the hour." Rivers nodded grimly. Understood. Callahan was escorted away without protest. That was a shift not just in the moment, but in power's fragile structure. Here was a young white officer removed in front of dozens of witnesses and a black federal official, not protected by his badge, but held accountable by it. Marcus turned to Solomon. I know this isn't what you came here for today. Solomon shook his head, voice soft. But I suppose I always knew it might be. What do you mean? Marcus asked, kneeling to eye level. Solomon looked to the oaks framing the park's entrance. You don't spend your life fighting for dignity and expect it to stay yours without effort. That bench has seen more of me than most people have. It holds memories and ghosts. I sit there because I remember when I couldn't. Marcus didn't respond right away. He scanned the faces around them, strangers, witnesses, citizens who now had to decide how this moment would live on, whether it'd vanish into a headline or become something larger. I'd like to walk with you, Marcus said. If you're up to it. Solomon grunted. Where to? To the precinct to file a statement, then the courthouse. This isn't ending in the park. Solomon looked at his satchel, the one nearly manhandled minutes ago. With care, he slung it over his shoulder and stood. I've marched across bridges, faced fire hoses and dogs, buried friends who didn't make it home. One more walk won't break me. As they moved, the crowd parted instinctively. Cameras followed, and so did the weight of what happened. What began as a confrontation evolved into a reckoning. Though Solomon entered the park seeking solitude, he left with a city behind him and a country watching. When news of the incident broke across Savannah, it tore open a wound the city had pretended was healed. Footage spread fast, first social media, then local news, then national outlets. A still image of Callahan gripping Solomon's arm, an elderly black man on a bench, appeared on screens nationwide. But it wasn't just the image that sparked outrage. It was what followed. The intervener wasn't a bystander, he was Marcus Langston, Deputy Director of the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. His badge carried authority to not only stop injustice in real time but dismantle it brick by brick. Within 48 hours, a federal investigation into Savannah PD launched. It started with Callahan but didn't stop there. Marcus moved fast, returning to D.C. only to mobilize forensic auditors, civil rights attorneys, and oversight officers. He returned to Savannah with 10 agents from the DOJ's Public Integrity Section, plus 2 from the Office of Civil Rights and the Inspector General's office. Their presence wasn't symbolic, it was surgical. Captain Rivers cooperated, but tension rippled through the department. Some officers felt betrayed, others welcomed scrutiny. It became clear Callahan's behavior wasn't isolated, it was a symptom of something entrenched. Anonymous tips poured in. Officers silenced for years found backup. One black officer admitted being reassigned after reporting a superior for racial slurs. Another recalled erased dashcam footage after an unjustified stop. The stories varied, but the pattern was unmistakable. Solomon, meanwhile, kept walking through Forsyth Park every morning, not defiance, but conviction. The bench was still his, and he wouldn't let ignorance steal it. But even he couldn't predict how deep the investigation's roots would reach. Marcus arranged a private meeting at the Historical Society. Solomon arrived with quiet dignity, satchel in hand, filled with letters and photos from a lifetime of resistance. They sat in a room of Savannah's history, portraits of governors, battle paintings, and a faded photo of a sit-in Solomon led. I wanted to tell you first, Marcus said. We found something. Solomon waited. There's a trail of misconduct reports dating back 15 years, Marcus continued. Many sealed or lost. Internal reviews that never happened. Evidence falsified. At least 3 officers promoted after civil rights violation accusations. And a whistleblower gave us something else. He slid a folder across. Solomon opened it slowly. Inside were scanned copies of a memo from a former deputy chief, outlining a quota-based patrol system in black neighborhoods. The language was clinical, but the intent clear: increased presence, proactive engagements, containment zones. It was policy, Marcus said, voice low. Not random. Institutionalized. Solomon's hands trembled as he closed the folder. You going to bring it down? We're not just bringing it down, Marcus replied. We're rebuilding from the ground up. That night, a press conference was held at City Hall. Marcus stood beside the mayor, who, after reviewing the findings, issued a public apology, her voice cracking as she admitted oversight failure and betrayal of trust. But words weren't enough. By week's end, Callahan was suspended without pay, facing charges for unlawful detainment and civil rights violations. Internal Affairs began auditing a decade of complaints, and the DOJ invoked Section 14441, enforcing federal oversight until systemic reform was achieved. Change met resistance. Some residents backed Callahan, claiming he was set up. Conservative pundits fan division, painting Solomon as a manipulator, Marcus as a disruptor. Threats came, letters, emails, whispers in city halls. But the movement didn't falter. For every voice trying to silence Solomon, a dozen rose to stand with him. One morning, he found white lilies on the bench with a note, "For your strength, for our future." That weekend, hundreds gathered at Forsyth for a peaceful demonstration, neighbors, students, veterans, ministers. They didn't march. They sat shoulder to shoulder on grass, benches, curbs, a silent statement that this park, like the city, belonged to everyone. A high school senior, Devontae, spoke. Mr. Reed showed us you fight by sitting still. Courage doesn't always look like shouting. It looks like refusing to move. Solomon stood at the back, cane in hand, eyes misted but unwiped. Marcus, nearby, knew they hadn't just uncovered corruption, they'd ignited a reckoning. Autumn settled gently over Savannah, a final blessing. Summer's heat gave way to cool, golden mornings. Forsyth Park was quieter, oaks shedding leaves onto worn paths. But the city's rhythm had changed, subtle, like a wound healing beneath the skin. The investigation brought indictments, reform, oversight. Callahan was stripped of his badge, awaiting trial, his actions exposed and catalogued. The city looked inward. Old ghosts were named. Whispered conversations became clear. It was, as Solomon often said, a beginning, not a conquest. Fusion. In October, a ceremony was held at the park's edge. A small crowd gathered near the bench, now restored with new pavers. Beside it stood a bronze sculpture, an elderly man seated, newspaper in lap, hand on a cane. The face wasn't Solomon's, not exactly soft, symbolic, for many. But everyone knew who it honored. Marcus stood at the crowd's edge, watching. Solomon sat front row, satchel at his feet, cane across his knees, hat tilted back, eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. The mayor spoke of healing, unity, responsibility, her voice wavering only at Solomon's name. Then she gestured to him. He stood slowly. The crowd hushed. I didn't ask for this, Solomon said, eyeing the sculpture, then the people. Didn't march years ago to become a statue. Didn't sit on that bench expecting cameras, headlines, applause. A long, thoughtful pause. I sat because I was tired. Tired of the long fight, of seeing the same battles in new uniforms. But mostly, I sat because I believed. Still believe, if we don't hold space, someone will take it from us. He scanned the crowd. This isn't just a statue of me. It's for every elder who never made it home, every voice silenced, every child asking, why do they look at us that way? For those who stood when it wasn't safe, and those just learning how. Applause swelled, deep, resonant, respectful, the sound of people part of something larger. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Marcus approached Solomon. They stood beside the sculpture, silent at first. You changed this place, Marcus said. Solomon shook his head. We all did. I just happened to be sitting when the world needed to see someone still standing. They chuckled. I'm back to DC next week, Marcus added, softer, but we'll keep oversight for years if needed. Good, Solomon replied. Don't let the light dim when cameras turn away. The breeze rustled fallen leaves. Children laughed distantly. A musician played slow jazz by the fountain. Solomon turned to leave, but Marcus stopped him, handing over a folded letter with the DOJ seal. It's official. We're launching a national task force on civil rights violations in small-town police departments. We're naming it after you. Solomon opened the letter, stared at the seal, then closed it, slipping it into his satchel. I'd rather they remember the truth, he said, almost to himself, that all it took was a man with a cup of coffee, a cane, and a bench. With that, he walked away, not into silence, but into legacy. What began as an ordinary morning in Forsyth Park, a quiet coffee, a folded newspaper, a man enjoying the breeze, unfolded into a story that shook Savannah's foundation. Solomon Reed, 82, never sought to be a symbol. He wasn't chasing recognition, marching for cameras, or demanding attention. He was present, a living witness to history, resilience, and quiet dignity. But when a young, arrogant officer tried to reduce that to suspicion, to question a lifetime of earned respect with a badge and a smirk, Solomon didn't back down. What followed wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning. Thanks to Marcus Langston, Deputy Attorney General, Solomon's refusal to be erased triggered an investigation unraveling years of corruption. What started on a bench led to federal indictments, new laws, and a restructured police department. But beyond headlines, the impact was in lives touched: the boy who saluted Solomon, the protester who spoke out, the officers who chose integrity over silence. Solomon showed us courage doesn't always mean raised fists or megaphones. Sometimes it's stillness, refusing to move when everything tells you to, saying, I belong here, not loudly, but with unshakable conviction the world must hear. The lesson? True power isn't always in the system, it's in us. In moments we refuse to shrink, in everyday acts of standing ground, protecting our dignity, defending another's right to be seen, heard, respected. Whether in a boardroom, classroom, park, or kitchen table, we all shape the society we leave behind. So ask yourself, where's your park bench? What injustice are you overlooking because it's easier to keep walking? When the time comes, will you sit in silence or speak? Solomon didn't expect to lead a movement, but he did, not by shouting louder, but by standing quietly, firmly, for what's right, with someone watching who chose to act. If this story moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes, don't let it end here. Help us share stories that matter. Subscribe to Stories, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who believes change is possible. Together, we're not just telling stories, we're keeping justice alive, one voice at a time.